If you're trying to sell your property for top dollar in Northeast Arkansas and think, I have time on my hand, I can wait, rather than trying to use the first 2 weeks to your advantage, it might be costing you thousands of dollars and you don't even know it. So if you've been thinking about selling a property before you make some costly mistakes in the first 2 weeks of listing your home, you might want to stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to bring some real value that you can leave with today that's going to make a giant impact on the sales price of your property. My name's Taylor Kiefner. I'm a local realtor here in Northeast Arkansas. I'm a multi-million-dollar producer. I've helped buyers and sellers all throughout Northeast Arkansas, and I've learned a lot and I've made a lot of mistakes. And I'm hoping in today's video, I leave you with some real value. That way, if you don't have an agent already that you're 100% obligated to working with, I might actually have a shot at earning your business. So if at the end of the video you find that I help you or you want to talk more in detail about what I bring to the table, send me a message. All my details are down below. I'd love to have an opportunity to earn your business. So most sellers, whenever they hit the market, they think, oh, well, the process starts the second we go live on the property. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Reality is that the most important part actually happens in the first 2 weeks of hitting the market. Instead of going on the market just to try something and thinking, well, in 30 days, if I don't get this price, I can adjust it, you might be shooting yourself in the foot, figuratively speaking. And I want to make this point very clear. You do not have multiple opportunities to make good first impressions in real estate. It's like when you went on a first date with a girl and you forgot to dress your best and you forgot to put on your nice cologne and you took her to just a casual restaurant right down the road. It's going to be really hard to recoup from that. Now, I'm not saying you can't fall in love. I'm not saying you can't go get married and have kids one day. I'm just saying I want my odds in real estate to be as high as possible to capitalize on the moment. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about in this video. And so the first point I want to make is we need to look at what's called the max exposure principle rather than potentially having a missed opportunity. Well, I don't know what was happening there, but I don't want to have a missed opportunity in exchange of just trying something on the market. So what usually happens at the launch point is, your home hits the market, MLS instantaneously, right? And your agent sends to some buyers that they might have or some agents or whatever, if they even do that. And maybe that's the most traffic that you'll get is right when you hit the market. The most amount of showings that you're ever probably going to get on that property is going to be in the first couple weeks of hitting the market. Here's the problem. If you miss this window, that means that there's going to be less visibility over time. There's going to be fewer buyers that actually see the property, and it's going to make it hard to recover from this. Whenever a listing goes stale, it is hard to rebound, let me tell you. And so let me ask you this. Your home gets the most attention right when it hits the market, correct? If you've ever sold a house before, you know the first 2 weeks of hitting the market is when you're going to get the most amount of showings, the most amount of views on the internet, the most traction. And after that 2 week window, it seems like listings just go down the hill. And I want you to put your buyer hat on for just a second. Being a buyer yourself, the longer the home sits on the market, the more leverage you feel you have. It's harder to negotiate a good, strong, compelling offer in the very first 2 weeks of hitting the market. So if you want to try to sell your property for top dollar, be aggressive upfront and give yourself as the seller leverage rather than giving yourself time on the market, thus giving the buyers the leverage in the end of the deal. Let's talk about the new listing versus the stale listing. Week one, there's tons of excitement whenever a property hits the market, right? It seems like there is more urgency that's happening around you, right? Buyers and showing agents are like, hey, can I show this property? It just hit the market and blah, 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 blah. And then buyers oftentimes move fast in this environment. When there's urgency and when it's new, buyers oftentimes want to hop on it and capitalize on this market before anybody else. Nobody likes stale food. Nobody likes stale candy. Nobody likes stale drinks. And let me tell you, nobody likes stale houses. Now, week three, on the other hand, let me ask you this. What's wrong with it? This is the biggest question people ask at week 3 and beyond. Home sits on the market for 3 months. It's a nice looking house. Subconsciously, buyers often ask themselves, what is wrong with this property? Or they think in their mind, well, it's probably overpriced. And oftentimes, if a home sits on the market longer than the average days on market for that home, and I'm not saying 3 weeks is some houses take naturally longer to sell, right? Some houses, and especially above the $300,000 price range, take, anywhere between 45 to 90 days to sell at times. But here's the trick question. Is if there was a way around that, if there was a way to sell it within a short amount of window, why would you not take advantage of that? Oftentimes, you can eliminate this question altogether and actually end up getting more money for your property. And I'm not going to go into the details of that right this second. If you want to learn more, send me a message and I would be more than happy to share with you our proven strategy to get multiple offers within the first weeks of hitting a market at a competitive price. But here's another problem. Beyond week 3, no matter the listing, no matter the marketing, no matter the open houses, no matter the rock star agent that you hire, low urgency seems to creep in. And this is a problem. When you want to try to sell a property for top dollar, you need the highest amount of demand and the lowest amount of supply. Well, when you overprice your property, when you price it like the neighbor down the road, and now you've got 2 homes that are overpriced, but you've still got a lot of people looking for a price bracket a little bit below where you're at. Now, all of a sudden, you have done what we called failed. You failed your listing, you failed in the market, and you potentially failed as a seller. Here's the point that I want to make. Homes do not get hotter, they get colder. Homes, as they sit on the market, do not become more attractive to buyers. They become less attractive to the buyers shopping for homes right now. This next one cannot be overstated, and it's the power of pricing a home the correct way versus overpricing it out the gate. This is what happens oftentimes. People say, well, I will start here, and over a period of time, if it doesn't sell, I will just drop the price later on. But here is the problem with doing that. When you price a home correctly out the gate, you create high activity. Now, people and sellers often ask me, well, what if I shoot myself in the foot? And what if somebody was willing to give me more for that property than whenever I listed it at a lower price? Well, okay, that might be true, but here's the problem. If you run your numbers based on comps and the way an appraiser would, a realtor should be able to know exactly what your home should appraise for or be able to sell for per the market. And then, not to mention, I would almost rather take the gamble of losing $5,000 off a purchase price rather than trying to get an extra $5,000 just to try to see, because you're treating it like Facebook Marketplace where you're expecting people to lowball you. But oftentimes in real estate, if you can be more competitive up front, you're actually going to make more money in the long run. But anyways, because of the fact that there's more showings whenever you price a home correctly up front. And when there's more showings, that equals more demand. And there's only one house just like this at this price, perhaps in this market right now, you, my friend, are on your way to making top dollar on your property. And of course, when they feel as though they're competing against other buyers, what happens? They write stronger offers. I like to tell all my clients this before we ever hit the market. I want you to put your buyer hat on for just a second. And let's pretend we walk through a house and it's been on the market for 1 day. Days on market, right? It's been on the market for 1 day, and you guys turn around and look at me, and this home's priced at $200,000, and it's just been on the market for 1 day. We have other people out in the parking lot ready to come inside and take a look at this house. And you guys turn around and look at me and say, Taylor, we love this house. What kind of offer can I write on this property? I'm not going to be able to tell you, well, let's try to get an offer for $190, because it's probably not going to happen. You're probably not going to get $10,000 off the purchase price instantaneously, knowing that there's other buyers you might have to compete against, etc. You might actually have to give a really good offer or something even above what they're asking, depending upon the terms of the deal. But now let's flip the script. Let's pretend this house has been on the market for 90 days because they wanted to test the market. And now this property that was originally priced at $200,000, we walk in it 90 days later. There's no one out in the parking lot. And you guys turn around and look at me. Remember, you're the buyer. You put your buyer hat on for just a second. And you turn around and look at me and you say, Taylor, what kind of offer should I put in on this property? What do you think Taylor's going to say? Well, hey, it's been on the market for 90 days. I guarantee you we can negotiate. We can maybe submit a lower offer at this point. Therefore, we might be able to squeeze 190 out of this property. Now, all of a sudden, you see why days on market makes a giant difference. And what affects your days on market is how you price the home in the beginning. You need to price a home correctly in the beginning rather than just taking a passive approach of, oh, I'll just drop the price later on. Because the more you do that, this is what happens. Traffic lowers. There's no urgency. And then, of course, you're doing price drops later, making people question what is wrong with this property. And I tell people this all the time. If you miss the market early, you chase it later. These two words might haunt you for the rest of your life, depending upon what seller you choose to be. What we push our sellers to try to be when hitting the market is called the obvious choice. Oh, I spelled obvious wrong, and I probably spelled all this wrong. But anyways, you get my point. The obvious choice. When you list a home, your house is either going to be the one that everybody wants, or you're going to make somebody else's home the home that everybody wants. What I mean by that is this. When you create either demand the correct way, you create multiple showings, competing buyers, and of course, negotiating power on your behalf. But if you do things the wrong way and create doubt, all of a sudden, fewer showings take place. Buyers are actually hesitant upon writing an offer. And of course, you as a seller lose leverage. Therefore, your price has to come down. And nobody wants to take less than what your home should sell for. But oftentimes, people want to try to overprice it up front, causing their home to sit on the market longer period of time, and they have to drop the price. The realtor is begging them to drop the price, or perhaps your realtor is absolutely an idiot. Oh, that slipped out, my bad. And they're trying to tell you, no, don't drop the price. Let me tell you, if you have a realtor telling you don't drop the price and you've been on the market for 90 days with no interest, run, fire them, report them. They should be trying to sell your house, and no marketing can take place or do better than an overpriced listing. Let me rephrase that. There's no marketing that can compensate or overcompensate for an overpriced listing. I can do as many open houses as I want. I can have the best marketing in the world, but if my house is overpriced, it's going to be very hard to sell to a buyer in today's market. Now, this is all circumstantial because if the interest rates were 2.5% right now, guess what? You could basically list a home at any price, and as long as you find a buyer for it, which there's tons of them, your price will probably go up in value and you can get whatever price you want. But guess what? Interest rates are not 2.5% anymore, nor will they probably ever be. And I'm not trying to sound like a negative Nancy. My point though is that's just not reality. And so this is what I tell people. You can either create demand or create doubt. Which one do you want to be? Now, this whole video is talking about the first 2 weeks of being on the market, right? And this is what we tell people. It's better to have a stronger launch than to be an average listing. Not all listings that sit on the market end up having to drop their price thousands and thousands of dollars, but your chances do go up being an average listing at that point. We would rather be able to put our best foot forward up front and be able to cause the most amount of traction regarding this property. That way we have the highest likelihood of selling for the most amount of money. Y'all ignore my bad illustrations. I'm a quick ADHD writer. I just kind of wanted to give you guys some visual points here of what we're dealing with. Here's the part that we talk about. This is what we call the high-level marketing strategy. So whenever you list a home, it's important to have good marketing on your side. You can price a home correctly and have bad marketing, and your house is not going to be seen by as many people. I want the most amount of people seeing the best aggressive priced property on the market. And this is how we do that. You've got professional photos. I see people, I literally met with a seller this week. It's a $450,000 piece of property here in Northeast Arkansas. And the previous realtor had taken cell phone photos. Cell phone photos. It's like the realtor used the front-facing camera rather than the back piece of the camera. And it was kind of frustrating, but anyways, obviously, whenever marketing property, you need a clean presentation. You need people to know exactly what they're getting into before they ever even come walk through this property. And this is why listing reviews are so important. Before we ever even list a property, we make sure our sellers are 100% on board with all the photos and descriptions, where that way, when we hit the market, we can have the confidence from the sellers that are backing us up saying, hey, this is exactly how my home needs to be represented. And of course, we need to make this home, make it to where people just stop scrolling. So again, I would rather have a strong launch up front rather than be another average listing. Might you still win? You can. Might you still be able to get a good price? Sure. But again, if you want to be able to increase your odds, or perhaps you've tried to sell your home before and you've just not had any luck, these are tactics that we use every single day that are getting deals done. Obviously, average listings, they blend in, right? They get skipped on the market. And of course, there's low engagement. Month 2, month 3, showings dwindle, views decrease, right? We do not want to put yourself in a position to be an average listing, but rather we want to have a strong launch from the very beginning. And this is what I tell people. Online is where buyers decide if it's worth seeing. Before they ever come, schedule a walkthrough. Before they ever come, take a look at your property. They're going to judge it based on the online marketing presence that we've created before they ever come walk through it and see it in person. And so strong launch will always pay dividends in just taking an average approach to listing a property. And this last one is super important that you pay attention to. Testing the market versus having a strategy in place that is guaranteed. Now, I'm not one of these realtors that goes into listing appointments guaranteeing that a house can sell in X amount of days for X amount of price with X amount of terms. But 2 + 2 will always equal 4. And if you understand real estate, if you have a real estate mindset, if you're working with a professional, that professional should be able to use the comps in the area to not just sell you on the idea of what your house could be worth, but rather there's a difference between what your home could be worth versus what your home is actually going to sell for in this market. I literally met with somebody yesterday and I told them, I said, hey, look, this house, if the interest rates were way lower, you could pick a price and it would sell instantaneously. But in a market like we're in, we have to be a little bit more strategic and make sure that we're playing our cards correctly. That way, when we hit the market, we don't just test the market, but rather we have what we call strategy. This is what sellers think. They say, well, look, I'm going to price a home high, and if it doesn't sell, we can just drop later. But again, I've told you multiple times in this video already, the longer a home sits on the market, the lower statistically, you can look this up, Google it, the longer a home sits on the market statistically is the lower the price of the property that you actually end up selling it for. Reality is when you test the market and when you overprice it in the beginning with the concept of dropping the price later, you actually lose momentum, you lose leverage, and then you lose that buyer or multiple buyers that you could have generated if you would have been strategic in the get-go. I always tell people this before they overprice their property and they say, well, we can just negotiate the price later. Well, you can, but you have to have a buyer interested in the property first. And people do not like overpriced properties right now. I told you in the last point, before they ever even come look at it, before they ever even try to negotiate, they're not just looking at marketing. They're looking at the price of the property and they're thinking, hey, is this home priced incorrectly or correctly? If it's priced close to being correctly, then yes, I'll come look at it and perhaps we can negotiate. But if it's way off, if you're being unrealistic, and if your realtor's telling you and making promises that they can't keep, you're actually setting yourself up for failure rather than success. So with that being said, in today's video, my goal was to not butter you up. My goal was to not tell you that you have the most beautiful home ever and it's worth $1 million more than what you have it listed at. My goal in today's video was to deliver some truth to you. Sometimes these points are hard to take, but selling a house is hard. Anyone that says it's not is probably lying and they probably haven't done it enough to prove it. We've sold countless amount of homes, helped so many families sell their home whenever perhaps it failed the first time to sell, or perhaps they didn't know which realtor to pick from. Something about us made us feel more comfortable and an easier choice to pick. Although we were not the most flattering with our words, although we didn't tell them the highest price possible. At the end of the day, we told them what it was going to take to sell their house for the top dollar in today's market. And we were actually able to fulfill that if they listened to us. Now, again, I'm not a bully. At the end of the day, I work for you, right? But at the end of the day, I can only advise you what to do. I can't make you do it. So if you've been thinking about selling your home in Northeast Arkansas and want a more tailored approach, or at least to get an opinion, from us on what we think we can do to help you. All the information that you need to get in contact with me is down below. We can schedule a one-on-one phone call. You can text me at your convenience. We can figure out a time where I can come walk through the property, sit down face to face, and explore all your options and lay them out on the table. If you have any other questions or need anything else, again, feel free to reach out to me. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, comment something that you learned, and subscribe for more videos. My name's Talon in Jonesboro, Arkansas with Keller Williams Realty.